But first, the 51st edition of the African Finance Ministers meeting is being held in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. The four-day event will be discussing ways of implementing the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, and it will be addressing some key macroeconomic concerns. CGTN's Girum Chala starts us off tonight.
A few months after its official signing, the issue of the Continental Free Trade Area is back. These African ministers of finance are here to map out ways of implementing what is to be the biggest single African market the world has ever seen. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed told the ministers here it is time to commit for a cause that delivers for the people of Africa.
The Continental Free Trade Agreement should be shaped and implemented so as to enable Africa to create opportunities for its citizenry, to spur our industrialization agenda, to ensure inclusive development for all Africans, and in particular women and the youth. Together we will grow. Together we will give our young people a stake in the future of our continent.
This four-day event aims to advance the ambitious initiative to form a regional common market which could boost intra-Africa trade from its current level of 16% to 52% by 2022. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa believes that is possible through economic Pan-Africanism.
Africa is growing again, but we are not growing as fast as we grew before. We are not growing at 6%, and we are not growing at numbers that rival Ethiopia's growth at 8.8%. We need to do better as a continent if we are going to provide jobs for our youth. And this new economic Pan-Africanism is really about ensuring that we can create the kinds of jobs that ensure that the youth can be employed. It is not necessarily only jobs in the manufacturing sector. We know that the service sector is also growing and growing very fast on the continent. The CFTA is also a lot about the service sector and how the service sector will provide the jobs that are needed for the youth.
The African Union sees the Continental Free Trade Area more than a success in the area of trade. It believes the CFTA can unite the fragmented African states into one.
As the rest of the world appears to get more fractured, we must advance our integration agenda and advance from 55 fragmented economies into a larger market with the prospect of a combined GDP of over $3 million annually. And if you look at the forecast from intra-African trade simulations, CFTA will increase the consumer spending to 1.4 trillion by 2020, and similarly increase intra-African trade by as much as 35 billion per year.
For both the AU and the UNECA, the most important and urgent action is to create the fiscal space to foster public and private investment while ensuring economic diversification with a view to creating jobs. And the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is needed to focus on realizing that an average African is benefited out of it. Girum Chala, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
And Girum Chala joins us now on the phone from the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa. So, Girum, Ghana and Kenya, they've ratified the CFTA deal last week. They became the first African countries to do so. Do we have any idea when the other 44 signatories will ratify the same deal?
Hello, Rama. It's interesting. This Continental Free Trade Area is something that is becoming mouth-watering for those countries in Africa which are really desiring to grow. You remember, 44 African states have signed that agreement so far as we know. And only, as you've mentioned, Kenya and Ghana have submitted so far as we know the implementation documents for the African Union Commission. The question is what you have asked generally. When are the other countries going to do the same thing that Kenya and Ghana have done? So far as we know, and I was talking to African Union officials earlier today, they said soon. There's no definite time because these things pass through individual state parliaments, lawmakers, and they need to also make some adjustments. This is about tariffs. This is about opening up space in their economy at the same time. But the hope is, according to estimates, if all 55 member states of the AU ratified the agreement, which is the CFTA, will bring together about 1.2 billion people with a combined gross domestic GDP that is of $2 trillion US, and no African state is assumed want to lose this opportunity. So the answer I can give you for now, soon.
All right then. So 21 countries are needed to ratify the deal for it to actually come into effect. Now, if you take out the two you just mentioned, that's 19 countries. Is the AU really confident that this will happen, that those remaining 19 countries will actually ratify it by the end of the year?
Well, what the AU really wants to see is all of the states to sign and submit their documents as soon as possible, as I was saying earlier, and not even to the end of 2018, because the sooner the better for the CFTA to be implemented. I was talking to AU officials, as I said earlier, that they really want individual African states to be confident that this continental free trade area is going to guarantee growth, industrialization, if you like, and job creation. So Donald Kabruka, one of the African Union Reform Committee members, earlier when he talked to me, said maybe in 6 months or less we'll see that all the 19 member states are going to, submit their implementation document, and we can just put this behind us and talk now about how to implement the CFTA agreement. So yes, the AU is confident, but it's not without a doubt and with no mitigation plans. The AU is also preparing to do lobbying, to do convincing during this few months' time, so that the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement can be translated as soon as possible, so we can also talk about these opportunities which are going to be seen across the continent. So yes, AU is confident, but we'll see if that's going to be the case or not.
Indeed, of course, walking the walk is usually the hard part.